our city clerk to please take the roll call.
Bowering. Here. Bruno.
Here.
Ruby.
Here.
Hilbert.
Here.
Kasserad.
Here.
Maladra.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Mayor. Here. Paschke. Swanson.
Here. We begin our council meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight I would like to invite our city administrator, who yesterday began her career June 2nd, 2008. So this marks her 16th year with the city. We welcome you to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Administrator Dawkins. And all of you on the council have some delicious Belgium chocolates before you, courtesy of Stephanie's husband, Bob. Item 3, public hearings, special items and presentations. It's my pleasure to offer to the council for consideration a proclamation dedicating June of 2024 as Pride Month in the city of Geneva. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Bowering makes the motion and Mayor makes the second. Any questions? Just a note of interest. In the proclamation, it reads that we'll be raising the pride flag on the east lawn of City Hall. That will take place this Wednesday at 6 p.m. So with that, a roll call vote.
Bowering.
Aye.
Mayor. Bruno.
Aye.
Ruby.
Aye.
Hilbert.
Aye.
Kasserad.
Aye.
Maladra.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye. And we have some friends with us tonight, Autumn and Sunny. Do you want to join me for a quick photo? Or if you'd like to say a few words, the podium is yours too, so I'll defer to you. Silence is good. Thank you both for being here. Our Assistant City Administrator, Mr. McCready, is going to take a nice photo. Get out of the shot. Okay, ready? Item 3B, folks, is to proclaim this Friday, June the 7th, 2024, as Gun Violence Awareness Day in the city of Geneva. Is there a motion? So moved. Motion by Bruno, seconded by Bowering. We have a very special guest with us tonight. All of us know this gentleman who does exemplary work in this space for the betterment of not only our community, but for communities surrounding. And it's my pleasure to welcome Steve McHugh. How are you, Steve?
Great, how are you, Mayor?
Good.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Burns and City Council. I'm Steve McHugh. I live in Geneva, and I'm the Illinois State co-lead for Be Smart Secure Gun Storage. On Friday, we honor the 140,000 Americans who are shot and injured or killed every year. And if you include their friends and family, that's over 7 million people per year that are affected. That does not include people like my friend Mark, who was with his family at the Highland Park parade when the shooting took place. They escaped without injury, but obviously affected. And imagine if something like that happens at Swedish Days or something like any of our events here. Just horrible. Our elected officials and police department do a fantastic job at keeping us safe, and thank you for that. So what more can people do? Just as general public, the easiest thing you can do is just secure your guns safely to prevent accidents and suicides, but also to prevent your gun from being stolen. Over 500,000 guns are stolen every year, and most of those are from vehicles. And what can the local government do? Just as an example, the village of Glen Ellen offers a $100 rebate on the purchase of safes and locks every year. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions for Mr. McHugh before we take a roll? If not, City Clerk Kellick, please take the roll call.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
Is there another special guest with us?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I came in a little late, and I guess if I took his spot.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that chair is McHugh's, by the way. No. Steve, may I trouble you for a photo? Of course. As we advance on the agenda, members of the council, without objection, I would like to move item 10A, which is Resolution 2024-61, supporting our firefighters, to item 3C, and then make 3C 3D. Any objection at all? Fantastic. We jump then to item 10A, which will now, for note-keeping purposes, will be item 3C, and that is to consider Resolution 2024-61, authorizing the purchase of replacement self-contained breathing apparatus systems from Air One Equipment Incorporated through the HGAC Consortium at a cost of $429,315. Bowering makes the motion. Mayor makes the second. City Administrator Dawkins?
Okay, so the requested purchase is to replace the fleet of our self-contained breathing apparatus that are used during firefighting and various other rescue activities that have immediately dangerous to life or health compromised breathing atmospheres. With the change in standards, we no longer can use rescue breathing in an emergency due to the fact that our units are not compatible with our surrounding community's newer units, and we also have units that are no longer serviceable, numerous air bottles that are reaching their end of life, and significant reliability issues that are driving increased maintenance costs. So as you saw in your packet, MSA provided the lowest cost and the best technology solution and is on the approved vendor quote list, and Air One Equipment, Inc. is the exclusive dealer for this geography. So with that, if there are any additional questions, we do have Chief Antonori with us this evening, who will be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Fire Chief Antonori from the council? City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
With 9 votes in the affirmative, 0 votes in the negative, and 1 absent, Resolution 2024-61 has been approved by this council. Thank you again to the council for allowing us to amend that agenda on the fly. We now go back to item 3D, which is public hearing on the establishment of a TIF district for the redevelopment project area as set forth in Resolution 2024-40 and known as the Southeast Master Plan, TIF 4 redevelopment project area. Is there a motion? So moved. Motion by Marks to open the public hearing, seconded by Kasserag to open the public hearing. Roll call or voice vote sufficient? Voice vote is sufficient to open the public hearing. Prior to taking that voice vote, I do want to make one statement regarding the public hearing. So if you would indulge me, please, this is for the benefit of not only the council, the community here live, and of course, the community tuning in. We are going to begin the public hearing with a presentation by the city's Economic Development Director, Kathleen Timoshenko. Following, a presentation by the City of Geneva's TIF 4 consultant, S.B. Friedman. Then, I will invite the public to provide their comments. All speakers, please provide us your name and spell your last name. Your address is not required, but you may share if you like. Leading up to this evening, every question asked of this city has been answered by professional staff, myself, my colleagues on the council, during the normal course of correspondence. All said questions and answers have been collected and shared with the entire council and is available on the city's website for the benefit of any party to review, and it's available on our city's website in both the city's TIF 4 and FAQ dedicated web pages. Therefore, I am asking all speakers to please be succinct, be direct, and be relevant in your remarks. Speakers will not be allowed to speak a second time. The matter before us this evening is about strictly and only whether the City of Geneva has, based on statutory requirements, fulfilled all said requirements to establish TIF 4. Tonight is not about the proposed development or any issues related thereto. That consideration will be taken up by the City Council on Monday, June 17th, in this room at 7 p.m. The only action the City Council has taken tonight is to open the public hearing, to conduct the public hearing, and then motion, seconded, and a roll call vote to close the public hearing. Lastly, I humbly yet firmly request that audience members please refrain from verbal outbursts of any kind, including clapping, for it only delays the opportunity for other folks to speak. And in some cases, as many will attest to, inadvertently intimidates folks who may wish to offer a contrary opinion than that which was just shared. We have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Voice vote, all say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The public hearing is open. Ms. Timoshenko, the floor is yours.
It's my other agenda item. Come on. Okay. Sorry about this. I'm trying to get the mouse back. Okay. Okay, thank you for your patience. Thank you, Mayor. So yes, we are here tonight for our Southwest Master Plan proposed TIF 4 public hearing. So I have a few slides that I'd like to show to relay kind of the big picture perspective of this project. Want to detail how the project has advanced by numbers and dates to our present state where we are right now having this public hearing. So after the review, we're going to discuss some common misunderstanding and some misinformation that we've heard, and we'd like to provide some project facts. So then following my presentation, as the mayor said, we will have our consultant from S.B. Friedman review the findings of the study. So a few weeks ago, I was here and I showed you a big long list of city planning documents that illustrated the city's goal for developing industrial uses in the territory south of Route 38 along the county line. And I showed you how this has been in our plans since the 1950s. But for this presentation, we're going to focus on 2010 to the present because What happened in 2010, that's when money really started to be expended to implement the plans, and actions were taken to further the plan, and to further industrial uses in the southeast planning area. So you, as a city council, are sitting here tonight, and you are positioned to make the final decision about this project. But you're being asked to approve the financing mechanism that will guarantee that the city has the capacity to achieve development in the southeast master plan area. You are in this position to make the final decision, but it's important to reflect on the fact that the project has been progressing for several years. 8 city councils have taken action. We've approved 41 resolutions and ordinances, 27 different elected officials. I spy one in the audience, too. 374 votes have been cast. 368 of those were positive votes, and 38 of those votes were unanimous. We have a 98% of the votes taken have been in support of this project. Some of you have been here for those votes. Some of you have cast the majority of those votes, and some have not been. Some are newer to the city council. So what has been voted on? We tried to categorize this a little bit. It doesn't total up everything, but this really shows you the progress. So we had 3 jurisdictional agreements. We had 10 engineering contracts. We had 8 annexations and easements. We had 6 financial advisor contracts. So the city council has authorized over $8 million in expenditures, and also general obligation bonds for the electric utility. Now, those were in the amount of $30,000, but about 26 is targeted for the expansion of, I'm sorry, 30 million. Big difference. About 26 million of those are for the SEMP area expansion. So I'd like next to move to take a look at the project milestones by dates. And again, we're going to focus on 2010 to the present. And it should be noted that the milestones we're going to talk about are ranked in our strategic plan as some of the top strategic plan goals and priorities. And this is through our citizen interactions and council rankings. So at the very beginning, during the early years of the project, it was pivotal to establish jurisdictional authority for the territory, to, plant the Geneva flag, so to speak. The city's jurisdiction of an area is determined by the facilities planning area, referred to as the FPA. So this means that the city commits to servicing the territory with utilities, sewer, water, sanitary, electric. And so the FPA boundaries are echoed in the boundary agreements with neighbors. So we have these in place with West Chicago and Batavia. So in 2011, the city really dug deep to start to study how those utilities were going to get located here. And the Southeast Master Plan study was initiated, and a plan was adopted in 2012 to proactively plan for orderly development of the SEMP area. So the successful development of the Southeast Master Plan area is reliant on the Couts Road extension, which is referred to as the spine road or the backbone, really, for the development. Plans began to take this project on in 2010 when the city contracted to relocate our water main, and then in 2012 when we entered into an IGA with IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation. In 2015, the city engaged engineering services, and a supplemental contract followed in 2017, and then the project was broadened to go from 38 to Fabian in 2018, when we entered into the Phase 2 design. At the same time, the city progressed with investigation of tax increment financing. And as I mentioned earlier, TIF was identified as a primary funding source in our SEMP plan. And since that time, there's been several strategic plan goals over the years directing staff to investigate TIF to finance infrastructure needed to bring additional industrial lands to a development-ready status. So to this end, since 2014, the city has worked through a series of steps that bring us to the present day today. So extending electric has also been an essential part of bringing forward SEMP development. So doing so, as you'll see, has had some starts and stops for a number of reasons I'll talk about in the next slide. But in the early implementation stages, the city entered into an agreement with ComEd and worked with the engineer to design the substation. These activities helped to define project costs more specifically than the SEMP plan was actually able to do. In 2020, the City Council authorized the application for Rebuild Illinois funds. We have talked about this grant prior. The city is one of a few municipalities that received this grant under the economic development category. And this is because the state of Illinois recognizes our efforts to bring forward industrial development to the region. In 2022, the grant award was secured, and the city committed funds for that project and the city rebooted design efforts and financing discussions so that we could complete the necessary electric extensions to SEMP as we've committed. So in the past few slides, we talked about progress that occurred by project, and like I said earlier, there were some gaps in the progress. And the gaps occurred because as work started to move forward on implementation, the city at the onset of the project originally thought that the city would fully finance all of the improvements, kind of in a build-it-they-will-come approach. And we were moving along this step. We had TIF as the preferred funding mechanism. The city thought that we would advance the funds, get these infrastructure in place, development would come, it would pay back the city over time through the increment generation. However, we had a few different property owners, no real solid development plans, and as we were working toward designing, there was a lot of questions, and the risk was reviewed, and the city council started to set objectives in the strategic plan for the staff to work with the development community to share the risk and to bring in a private sector partner. So we do have a developer, Midwest Industrial Fund, now MWI, who was successful in acquiring property. We did focus on the land that was adjacent to the spine road, Couts Road, because that was the likely path for all of the extensions of utilities. So it was important for us to look at the land adjacent to the road. So having a private partner brings a few things. They bring equity into the project, they share the risk, they have expertise in development that helps us make some decisions. One decision that helped the city a lot was the trajectory of Couts Road, so that we made sure that the trajectory of Couts Road left the most buildability possible. So that was something that the developer helped us to refine. So as we move forward, we were reviewing the costs of the project, we were reviewing the financials, and this is at about the same time that the developer, the landowner, helped the city finance our Rebuild Illinois grant prerequisite work that we had to do to get that grant in. We also realized at this time that TIF alone and the private sector alone could not carry all of the electric costs that were needed. We would not have a viable project if we did that, and the electric utility had to determine that there would need to be some outlay from the electric facility to bring forward development in the SEM. So as engineer designing was fully refined and we started to understand soil conditions and terrains along with our private sector partner, project readiness was still not there because we still needed routes for the utilities. So during 2020, 21, 22, we really focused on getting these routes set. And this was easements from other property owners, as you can see exhibited here, to bring utilities. We've got utilities coming from all different directions. So, as Mayor Burns stated in the opening, the city has had a number of questions that we have tried to outline and respond. We have a 17-page document that's on the website, but I'd like to take this opportunity to just cover a few, which I think are the most important misunderstandings that we've had to date. So, at the main thing I'd like to talk about today is that the city is not proposing a $185 million bond. That would be an extremely risky thing for the city, and we are not proposing that. That number is in the TIF plan because by law the city must identify total expenditures that the redevelopment project could incur, and this is an upper expenditure limit that is for during the life of the TIF. The city is not rushing the project. I think I've demonstrated that today. It's been a slow and steady winning of the race, we hope. A developer is not driving the request for TIF. TIF has been identified by the city and is being pursued as the primary funding mechanism for completion of SEMP improvements. This has been since the onset of implementation, before a developer was even involved. TIF is not proposed for any one developer. There is other land in the TIF other than that which is proposed for industrial development. Establishing TIF 4 will not cause taxes to be raised. It's actually the way not to raise taxes because the TIF district will allow future property tax collections to finance new development without raising taxes. TIF does not misallocate funds. TIF is a program that allocates future increases in property taxes from a designated area to pay for improvements within that area. It does not misallocate funds or divert funds from taxing districts. Keep in mind, those funds would not be available without the outcomes achieved by using the TIF funding mechanisms. All taxing districts benefit in the long term from the city's efforts in economic development. And this is seen in the support that we have received from the joint review boards from our taxing district partners. So just a few project facts, if I may. So the proposed TIF is proposing to use future property tax gains or increment to pay for portions of road infrastructure and site preparation. The proposed public-private partnership is designed to shift a majority of the risk to the private sector. We are proposing a conservative approach, spending TIF dollars only when development is achieved and the area is performing. We are not proposing to issue bonds in advance of development. The city has worked and will continue to work with taxing districts to improve our tax base. Lastly, the city is capable of achieving this project. So I'd like to conclude with one last by the numbers slide. And you can see the number is all the same. It's number 1. So the most important number, I think, of the presentation is the number 1. We are one community, and this project, developing the SEMP area, is good for the community as a whole. For several years, we have had one top strategic plan goal, and it's to develop the SEMP area. Since 2020, and even before that, this has been the top economic vitality goal for your economic development department. We have one way to diversify the tax base. Our tax base is reliant on residential taxpayers. In 2009, the percentage of residential taxpayers that we were reliant on was 74%. Today, it's 79%. It's not getting better. It's getting more reliant on residential. There's only so many types of tax classifications, and there are limited opportunities to diversify. This is our chance to bring forward industrial development that will help to diversify the tax base, that will diversify the tax base. We have one joint review board meeting. We meet with them every single year, and every single year our taxing partners ask us, hey, how's it going with TIF 4? We have received unanimous support, and that is because they understand the value of this project and the future revenue that will be realized for their taxing districts from this project. We have one financial tool. We have one financial tool available to us that will help us achieve the goals with the minimum risk that we need to bring forward. We do not have other options. We have one chance to move forward with this project. We have worked to implement this project for over 14 years. You have things aligned right now. You have a very strong market. You have a private sector partner who's ready to go. You have a municipality that's ready to go. We have one chance. And I don't know if that's going to come about again. But what I do think is if the TIF is not approved, this will not be developed in Geneva. And this project doesn't get built in Geneva, it's likely to be built under someone else's flag. We request support for the TIF district to allow the city of Geneva to create the financing tool that will allow for the orderly and fiscally conservative development of the SEMP. I thank you, and now I would like to introduce Caitlin Johnson from SB Friedman to provide information on the study.
Thank you, Director Timoshenko. Ms. Johnson, welcome.
Control L.
Yep.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here this evening with you all. My name is Caitlin Johnson. I am a vice president with SB Friedman Development Advisors. I'm here tonight with my colleague Adam Daniel. SB Friedman is a real estate and economic development consulting firm specializing in special district designation, market analysis, development strategy, and public-private partnerships. The city engaged SB Friedman to conduct the formal tax increment finance eligibility study and prepare the redevelopment plan and project for the proposed TIF 4 Southeast Master Plan area. And tonight we are going to be talking through some of the technical sides of eligibility and then going through key components of the redevelopment plan. Before we get into the details, we'd like to step back and talk about what is TIF. Kathleen did a great job of outlining some of those misconceptions, but for the sake of this presentation, we'll run through some of that again. So TIF is an area-based, local government-controlled public-private finance tool that will allow for the incremental property tax growth within the district to finance the necessary improvements today. TIF captures incremental new property tax revenues in that defined geographic area, also known as a redevelopment project area or the TIF district. The reinvestment happens in that area. Property taxes for properties outside of the TIF are not impacted, as Kathleen was mentioning. We've heard some public comment that TIF misallocates funds and removes current tax revenues away from other taxing bodies. I would just like to clarify tonight that TIF does not misallocate funds or divert funds from other taxing districts. Property owners within the TIF district will continue to pay their taxes as normal. Taxing districts will receive the same revenue from the first year of TIF through the last. So that's that dark blue frozen base value that you see in the chart. This is referred to as the frozen base value. New development within the TIF adds a new property tax increment, which will allow for reinvestment in the TIF district. These funds would not be available without the outcomes achieved by the TIF funding mechanism. Under the TIF Act, the life of the TIF district would be 23 years, and it cannot be extended without approval from the state. Once the TIF district ends, the taxing districts receive the benefits of these new funds that would otherwise not be available without the outcomes from this TIF funding mechanism. So today we're talking about the TIF for proposed redevelopment project area, which is located on the southeast edge of the city as shown on the map, generally bounded by Route 83 in the north, Fabian Parkway on the south, the DuPage County, Kane County border on the east, and then Kirk Road on the west. The proposed district consists of 20 parcels, of which 4 are improved, 12 are vacant, and then 4 are rights of way, which are the railroad parcels that you see in that hatch there. 3 parcels were defined as improved due to the presence of a primary structure on the land. We've also included 1 additional parcel as improved, as it's a side yard serving and parking lot serving the adjacent building. So therefore, that parcel is also considered improved. There are 3 primary structures within the proposed RPA, and the current land uses in the district include vacant land, commercial, and residential. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the vacant parcels. Per the TIF Act, vacant land must not have been used for commercial agricultural purposes within 5 years prior to the designation of the redevelopment project area, unless it has been in an industrial park conservation area or has been subdivided. We've heard concerns in public comments that farming has occurred in the last 5 years, and I just want to state that all of the undeveloped parcels in the proposed district are considered vacant because at the time of designation, owners will have either provided us with an affidavit that states that the 5 years prior the land had not been farmed or that land had been subdivided. So on this map, you can see an illustration of which parcels we have received affidavits for, so those yellow parcels, and which parcels will have been subdivided. And this consists of all of the vacant land in the proposed TIF district. So to create a TIF district, state statute outlines criteria that must be met. SB Friedman evaluated the proposed RPA against these criteria to determine if the area would qualify. There are different factors and approaches for eligibility for improved land and vacant land, so we're going to talk through those now. So for improved land, there are 2 pathways to eligibility. To be designated as a blighted area, 5 of 13 possible factors must be present and reasonably distributed. So those eligibility factors are listed on the bottom of the screen. The other pathway to eligibility is a conservation area in which 3 of the 13 factors must be present and at least 50% of the buildings must be aged 35 years or older. The conservation district is aiming to intervene before properties become blighted. SB Friedman takes a rigorous approach to conducting eligibility to ensure that we comply with state statute. We conduct field work where we go out and look at each parcel and document external property conditions. We also review data regarding the age and property value from the Kane County Assessment Office. We also review documentation related to building code compliance and the presence of utilities. We evaluated the evidence of recent private investment. We reviewed the city comprehensive plans, including the 2012 Southeast Master Plan, and we compiled and mapped all of these potential factors to assess the distribution on a building by building and parcel by parcel basis. We also reviewed a technical memo related to flooding. So we're gonna walk through each of these factors that we found. So as outlined in the TIF plan, improved parcels in the RPA qualify as a conservation area. 3 of 3 buildings, so 100% of the primary structures are over 35 years of age. And we found 4 of 13 factors to be meaningfully present and reasonably distributed. And those factors were the lack of growth in EAV, deterioration, inadequate utilities, and the presence of structures below minimum code standards. The first factor that we found was a lack of growth in EAV for improved parcels. This was an area-wide factor, and we found that the EAV growth of the improved parcels in the proposed RPA grew less than the growth of the balance of the city for 3 of the last 5 year-to-year periods. We also found that EAV growth had been less than the consumer price index growth during that same period. We evaluated this factor area-wide and found it to be meaningfully present. The next factor that we found was deterioration, and physical deterioration was found on 3 of 4 parcels, so 75% of the improved parcels. The most common form of deterioration was on surface improvements, including streets and parking areas, including cracks in the infrastructure. The TIF Act also defines deterioration for buildings as defects in building components such as doors, windows, porches, gutters, downspouts, and fascia. When we conducted our field research, we evaluated the presence of deterioration on primary structures only. We did not include any deterioration that may have been found on ancillary buildings like farmhouses or barns, etc. It was just for the primary structures. Observed deterioration included cracked foundations, missing siding, rotten windows, and broken downspouts. Deterioration of buildings and surface improvements can make it appear as though the proposed district lacks investment and can make it difficult to attract investment. This factor was meaningfully present and reasonably distributed throughout the RPA. This slide is some examples of the deterioration that we found in the district. So in that first picture, we can see some of the deteriorating siding, the window trim and foundation is cracking. The second picture, we can see rotten fascia near the roof line, and then, of course, examples of the surface deterioration that we saw. The next factor that we looked at was inadequate utilities. We received a memo from the city's Department of Public Works that stated 100% of improved parcels within the district suffer from inadequate utilities. 4 of the 4 improved parcels are not served by electricity due to a lack of capacity, and Kathleen talked a lot about the history of getting electric to this area. 2 of the 4 improved parcels down in the southeast corner do not have water or sewer connections. Significant utility extensions will be required to support redevelopment in this area, including the construction of a new electric substation to service this area. And Kathleen talked a lot about those infrastructure and utility needs. This factor was found to be present and present to a meaningful extent and reasonably distributed throughout the proposed RPA. And then the final factor that we looked at for improved parcels is building codes. 3 of 3 of the primary structures do not conform to the city and county's codes, which represents 3 of the 4 improved parcels. So according to our review of the building age data, the 3 buildings in the proposed RPA were constructed and not substantially rehabbed prior to the adoption of the city's current building codes. And you can see a list of the codes that are currently used on the slide. These codes were updated from 2009 to 2015. And although the development of these properties predates these current codes, these buildings may not necessarily be in direct violation. They may have been grandfathered in, but even so, substantial rehab and reinvestment in properties requires that the buildings be brought up to code, and doing so may be economically prohibitive for development. Based on this factor, or this information, this factor is present and meaningfully distributed throughout the study area. Next, we're gonna talk through the vacant parcels. So there's 2 pathways to eligibility for vacant parcels. There's what we call the 2-factor test, and there's a list of factors in that left-hand column that you have to qualify for. The path that we took for this study was the 1-factor test, in which we found flooding to be the case. That third bullet, the area prior to its designation is subject to or contributes to chronic flooding. So we found that the vacant parcels qualify as a blighted area under the 1-factor test, as the vacant parcels contribute to flooding within the watershed. We relied on a study conducted by V3 companies that was produced in December of 2023, which stated that runoff from the study area contributes to flooding in areas of the Fox River, Crest Creek, and the Mississippi River. We found that this factor is meaningfully present and reasonably distributed throughout the RPA. In addition to this formal eligibility requirements for vacant and improved, there were a number of required test and findings for the proposed district as a whole. The first test is a historical look back related to the lack of growth in private investment. The city has been planning for southeast industrial expansion for many years, and has taken a series of steps to secure this future land use, as Kathleen has given a great overview of. The 2012 Southeast Master Plan sets the vision and expectations for development and includes recommendations on how to get there, with TIF as a primary funding mechanism. But even with this vision since 2012, there's been no private investment that has occurred, as demonstrated by the limited building permit and lagging EAV growth. The next factor that we looked at is what we refer to as the but-for test. Without the TIF, or but for the creation of the TIF, critical resources would be lacking that would otherwise support the redevelopment of the TIF district, and the TIF would not reasonably be anticipated to be developed. The city identified the Southeast industrial expansion as early as 1997 in the strategic plan, but even with previous attempts at development have been infeasible due to the extraordinary development costs of utility and infrastructure connection. Without the support of public resources, as Kathleen was discussing, the redevelopment objectives would not occur. The area-wide improvements and the development assistance needed are costly, and the private market has been unable to absorb these costs on their own. Public resources to assist with the road, the infrastructure, and site preparation costs are needed to leverage private investment and facilitate area-wide redevelopment. Therefore, but for the designation of the TIF district, these projects, which would contribute substantially to area-wide redevelopment, are unlikely to occur. There are 4 other required test and findings that are also listed on this screen. We found that the proposed RPA includes only contiguous parcels. The plans conform to and promote land uses consistent with the Southeast Master Plan, the comp plan. No displacement will occur, and that the redevelopment plan is estimated to be completed, and all obligations issued shall be retired no later than December 31st, 2048. So the second half of the report that we produced is the redevelopment plan, and we will talk through just a few highlights related to the plan. First, the major redevelopment objectives. The goal of the TIF district is to reduce or eliminate the conditions that qualify the proposed RPA as a blighted area for vacant parcels and a conservation area for improved parcels. The plan outlines these 7 major redevelopment objectives. The first is facilitation of the renovation or construction of stormwater management systems to address issues related to downstream flooding. The second goal is to facilitate the physical improvement and rehab of structures within the RPA and encourage the construction of new development where appropriate. Another goal is to foster the replacement, repair, construction, and improvement of public infrastructure. We also want to provide resources for streetscaping, landscaping, and signage to improve the image and attractiveness of the area, facilitate property assembly and marketing of sites, and support the goals of overlapping plans. The final redevelopment objective is coordinating available federal, state, and local resources. The act outlines several categories of expenditures that can be funded using tax increment revenues. The financial plan component of the plan outlines these eligible costs and budgets. The total eligible redevelopment cost define the upper expenditure limit that may be funded using tax increment revenues, which in this case is $185 million. As Kathleen mentioned, I would just want to reiterate that this is not a bond issuance. This is a ceiling amount that may be funded using tax increment revenues during the life of the TIF. The proposed budget allocates these costs to various eligible redevelopment cost line items. Adjustments may be made to these various line item costs. This is expected and may be made by the city without any amendment to the redevelopment plan. And then finally, the city can only use TIF revenue for eligible costs, and the city of Geneva handles TIF expenditures the same way as all other city expenditures, following best practices for budgeting. And finally, this is the future land use plan, which is required by the TIF Act. The proposed RPA has been designated as a mixed-use district, which allows for commercial, residential, industrial, and rights-of-way in conformance with the comprehensive plan in the 2012 Southeast Master Plan. We have been going through the public approval process for the TIF 4 since March 28th when the plan was put on file. A few key dates: on April 30th, we held the Joint Review Board meeting, and tonight is the public hearing. We anticipate City Council consideration on July 8th. And with that, would like to open it up for any questions and discussion.
Ms. Johnson, thank you very much. Without objection from the council, we're going to proceed to the public. Director Timoshenko, you had something else you wanted to add, or no? Nope. Just grab the phone. Again, folks, if you wish to speak to, ask questions of, make comments regarding the TIF itself, not the redevelopment project, not the proposal by our friends at MWI, any of that, but just the TIF and whether or not you believe the City of Geneva has successfully complied with all regulations thereto, now is your chance to do so. Again, we invite you to the podium. We kindly ask that you state your first and last name. If you so choose, you can share your address. And again, we ask that your comments be cogent. And I do have the authority, respectfully, should we vary from the topic at hand, I will interrupt and kindly ask that we bring it back to center. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
June Marr, Geneva Township, 36 years. So we finally have the opportunity to look at the SB Friedman photos. Thank you, dear. So it looks as though the two-story white gray house that was shown but not labeled was never actually a primary building. It's not on Mrs. Bussey's property. It's, we believe, it was part of Mr. Bork's property, and it's no longer there. One of the stated stipulations is that the building has to be present in order for this to comply to the blight or to contribute to that statute. I would like to move on to my second comment.
Of course.
There was a comment made and a staff answer provided by staff per the Illinois TIF Act and reiterated, only looking at Mayor Burns, was reiterated that per the Illinois TIF Act, vacant land must not have been used for commercial agricultural purposes within 5 years prior to the designation of the redevelopment of the project area. Commercial agriculture is the process of growing food for the purpose of selling it as a business venture. In this answer, staff does not deny that this property was farmed, nor do they present any evidence that it was not farmed. Neither does SBC. They do mention an affidavit. Staff and SBC do not disallow or exclude a small business venture. MIF has continued to designate all their parcels, but in particular, parcel number 12-12-400-015 on the Kane County tax rolls as being farmland, not vacant land, as stipulated by the Friedman Report and the TIF Act. The other parcels within this development are also listed on the tax rolls as farmland. For the past several years, MIF, now under a different name, has had the farmer till the weeds under for most of the property, but knowingly allowed him to continue to harvest the grass hay field as food for livestock and sell it at a profit. As recently as last summer, grass hay was cut, baled, and sold that has been grown on parcel number 12-12-400-015. There is currently still grass hay growing on this parcel. It is therefore a fact that this parcel was used for a commercial agricultural business venture within 5 years prior to the designation of the redevelopment of the project area. And that said business venture was the process of growing food for the purpose of selling it. The SB Friedman, as I mentioned, does not deny or provide evidence that this property was not used for farming. I believe that this excludes this from the TIF district. And being compliant with Mayor Burns, I will save one of my other questions for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We invite whoever wishes to speak next to do so. Welcome.
Brian Maher, M-A-H-E-R. My wife did just mention 5 parcels. Well, she mentioned one in particular where they were growing the there were 5 parcels bought by MIF. I could I have the numbers. When I send you the emails over the next few days, you'll be able to see it. 30 acres, 55 acres, 47 acres, pretty large parcels. They paid anywhere from $1.3 million to $3.3 million for each one of these parcels. So they've invested nearly $10 million in purchasing this property. It seems to me that a developer who has told us how successful they have purchased this property with the intent to develop it. And this was all done without the but-for requirement, because staff and mayoral responses indicated that MIF didn't ask for it to TIF. However, it has now been declared that without the TIF funds, this will not move forward. So perhaps in 23 years, or perhaps another 12 after that, if it's reauthorized, taxing bodies will start to realize profits from this, more than the small EAVs that they get currently. But if this property were marketed, the right developer could come in and start turning tax increases over in a year or two. Are there developers who would put up for the infrastructure? I ask that question. How were developments realized prior to 1977 when TIFs originated? By developers willing to shoulder the risk in exchange for the profits. Not that I'm a fan, and thankfully neither is P&Z, of the Venture Park project, which is going to be coming in front of this board shortly. Another mega warehouse that's going to be built. This is not part of the TIF, but they're willing to build on farmland with no roads or other infrastructure without TIF funds, because this is not part of the TIF. Simple economics of supply and demand highlight the desirability of this land for development, making it prime real estate. We don't have much left in this town of prime real estate. The but-for argument in state statutes does not stipulate that a TIF can be approved solely based on preferred concept or perceived maximum ROI. The statutes are designed to make development feasible so the developer can earn a return while contributing to the community's overall economic development goals. Where is the evidence that this land would not be developed but for the TIF? Vacant land is any real property without commercial, industrial, or residential structures that has also not been used for agricultural purposes. And as my wife indicated, we know that did happen on one of these. So why are these 5 parcels still farm and cropland on the tax rolls? Friedman in the report, and even tonight, referred numerous times to it being vacant land. This has been done to simplify the TIF eligibility to meet just one factor to qualify as blight. Farmland requires 5 factors to be called blighted. Vacant land has a higher tax rate and EAV, which would have provided more revenue to all of the taxing bodies here. The TIF statute's definitions of vacant land states that the land, that's the agricultural thing, we've talked about that again already, but as you can see, the statute also refers to industrial park conservation, which simply stated means there's a high unemployment in the area. Has anyone confirmed whether or not the specifications regarding the parceling of the land have been met? Is there any documentation or complaints from areas along the Fox River, such as Geneva or Batavia, regarding flooding caused by this property? This prime soil has been farmed for 180 years. You cannot farm an area that floods. Statute indicates that costs incurred by a redeveloper related to the construction, renovation, or rehab of a project may not exceed 30% of the annual interest incurred by the developer with regard to the development project. Now, the questions that Ms. Tomchenko referred to, the public comment questions, I have a few of those I'll refer to. Question was, will the developer receive TIF funds for up to 30% of their interest payments? The staff answer is no. And it's good that we have that on record, because it is allowed in TIF statute for up to 30% of these interest charges to be paid. We've been told that TIF is needed because the territory is challenged by substantial upfront infrastructure and site prep costs. And we saw the chart up there by Friedman about the estimated redevelopment project costs. So I don't understand some of these costs, how they are considered infrastructure or site costs, things such as Job training or retraining, that's $500,000 on that. There is $2 million for financing costs in this TIF. Relocation cost of $200,000. Payments in lieu of taxes, $200,000. And interest costs by the developer, $700,000. And of course, all of these costs are in 2023 dollars and may be increased by 5% after adjusting for annual inflation. So every year, all of these numbers go up 5%. Bless you. Now I'm going to go back to comments previously made by the mayor from the dais and in emails regarding the city's inability to have any communication with the developer related to passing along concerns about the trees that were ultimately destroyed.
Mr. Marr,
Yes.
I've consulted with our city attorney prior to tonight's meeting. We expected commentary regarding that topic. That topic is not relevant to this evening's discussion.
Last week, there was a response from staff regarding questions during public comment. The question was, the developer purchased the property in 2016 and held it for 7 years to allow it to sit so the property would lag behind the city as a tactic to meet TIF eligibility. That was the question. The answer is, the developer acquired land between 2016 and 2018. The city and the developer have been working to coordinate complex roadway, utility extension, financing, and phasing plans that involve multiple jurisdictions and authorities, private and public easements. So perhaps there is an explanation that can correlate what seem to be, to me, opposite declarations from the mayor and staff. I have now heard both the city can and cannot work with a developer. That's what it sounds like. The written redevelopment plan must address 10 provisions, one of which is, if property is to be annexed to the municipality, the written plan must include the terms of the annexation agreement. This requirement is not in the Friedman plan. And it does say must address. That is what state statute says. According to answers provided by last week's email to questions during public comment, my question was misinterpreted. I asked if the public representative needed to be within 750 feet, not live 750 feet from the site. The question was, does the law require, this is what it said in staff's memo, does the law require the public member to live 750 feet from the affected property? The answer is no. Illinois statutes say a representative from the municipality is a JRB member as well as a member from the public residing in the redevelopment project area. If no qualified person is available, the JRB is relieved of the requirement for this member. Why was a public member included who does not reside in the area? Why was one allowed when relief of the requirement was allowed? Why were another question from.
Mr. Marr, forgive me
Yes.
for interrupting, but grateful that you allow me to do so. You're referring to the JRB meeting. The JRB meeting has come and gone. Tonight, we're discussing the TIF, period. We're not discussing what may have transpired prior to this evening. We've had summaries by both our director and our consultant. We're talking about whether or not we met the requirements as codified in state law to enact a TIF.
Fair enough.
The JRB matters were discussed, they were answered, and I would respectfully request that we bring it back on.
Fair enough. I think it's a valid question, though, about the process and the
The process was
transparency.
The process was called to question. The question had been answered with integrity, with clarity, and I believe that stands on its own merits. So we'll move forward.
Well, of course, Ms. Tomchenko referred to these questions.
Yes, of course, and those
As-
17 pages of those questions are on our line. We're here to
Right.
talk about the construction of the TIF based on the
So,
examination of the
okay,
site property.
so the JRB in Sugar Grove didn't approve the request.
That's not relevant, sir.
Okay, fair enough.
We're not talking about Sugar Grove tonight.
The tax increment financing has potential drawbacks. First, poorly designed or poorly implemented TIF plans may not always be financially successful, and there is a substantial risk that they may fail. There's no guarantee that the development project will lead to increased private sector investment, more jobs, or higher property values. Secondly, even financially successful TIF projects may not be successful in an economic sense. Governments providing TIF project subsidies to businesses located in a growth corridor experiencing natural economic expansions may be wasting dollars if the businesses would have located and prospered in that area anyway, with or without subsidies. Such TIFs fail the but-for test, as I stipulate this one does. Third, any TIF district failing the but-for test results in an opportunity cost to other government entities. Schools and other units of government sharing the same tax base with the TIF sponsoring governments will not share incremental revenues until the TIF district is dissolved many years later. The loss of, and this, we're talking about loss of actual or potential revenue, raises another issue. Schools and similarly situated governments that lose revenues captured by the TIF sponsor may have to respond by increasing the tax rate to compensate for a stagnant tax base. Although there may be no direct increase in tax rates, there may be an indirect tax rate increase later. I would also, this may not be, maybe this isn't something, well, I would also bet that MIF will be having their taxes reassessed and reduced as often as possible.
Not relevant,
during the
sir.
life of the TIF.
Not relevant at all.
True. But it's a point.
But
But it's
hey,
a point that needs to be out there.
But
Mayor.
we're having a hell of a time, so it's good.
There you go. Staff has said there's a balance between near-term risks and long-term benefits. You better pull out your crystal ball then, because these near-term risks are real, and many things could influence the success or the failure of this project. Putting our taxing bodies and your constituents at risk for real financial harm, it's a possibility. I can assure you that TIFs will be a hot-button issue in the very near future. It actually has already started. If any shortcuts or questionable data have been applied, I'm not saying that it is, but if any have come out, it will become public knowledge and not be looked upon favorably down the road.
Would you mind repeating that? I couldn't quite understand the statement.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it did happen, but if there have been any shortcuts or questionable data, for instance, a photograph of a building used to call a property blighted that no longer exists, which state statute says you cannot do, that's questionable. And if there are other things that myself and I think other people may bring to light, I'm not saying that there are. I'm not saying there's anybody's trying to do anything underhanded here. I don't think that's the case. But I think we're entitled to have it looked at closer if we so desire. So I'm sorry, but these discrepancies that I've talked about, not having the annexation plan as required by state statute, that's a discrepancy. They don't inspire confidence that your fiduciary responsibilities to the taxpayers have been met. And I ask this body to consider your options carefully. Myself and others have shown you misrepresentations of fact throughout this process. I ask you to not move forward on this until these discrepancies can be evaluated.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. This gentleman in the back beat you to it, then we're going to get to you, Mr. and Mrs. Dinwiddie. Well, I guess we'll have Mr. Dinwiddie. I say we arm wrestle?
I'd lose.
No. Good to have you here tonight, sir.
I'm Carl Dinwiddie. My connection to this TIF is Waubonsie and the King County Forest Preserve, where I pay taxes. I guess I'll start with money. That's always a good place to start. I see 26 million for electric work and general obligation bonds, but if we haven't built anything yet, how are we going to get, where, it's just a question, and I know y'all don't have to answer my questions anyway. Where is that money going to come from except out of the city coffers and current taxpayers' tax money? Aurora made that mistake. I know it's a valid example. They said for a year they're going to bond 50 million, and then they neglected to figure they're not going to get any money for 3 or 4 years, so they raised the bonding another 8 million. So just questions out here, where are you gonna get this money to start paying for this electric work? It's just a blanket naked statement. The other thing, I was here for the JRB and I listened pretty much to the same presentation again tonight, justifying the TIF via the statutes. And the same, both times, what I heard, in my opinion, were a lot of conclusionary and naked statements just kind of thrown out there, and I didn't see a lot of proof. And I'm just not convinced that it meets the standards. I'm not compelled to believe it meets the standards, and I'm not going to go by issue by issue. It would take me a day. The last point is about the railroad, and you have an agreement, and again, just a little story as an example.
Is this story relevant to the city of
Yes, it
Geneva?
is. It's relative
It
to
is to the city of
railroads and how you do agreements and how you did your agreement with this
Will you allow
railroad.
me the pleasure of determining whether this is relevant as you continue
Sure.
speaking? Okay, thank you.
Oh, can I just kind of go over it for 20 seconds?
Well, we'll see.
Okay,
You go ahead and-
okay. No, of course, you always have the right to determine whether it's relevant and say, stop, Carl. Hey, DuPage Airport.
Stop,
got-
Carl.
Where you're
DuPage
at.
Airport has nothing to do with the city of Geneva.
No, they have a railroad that go through
Yes,
there.
we were very
And
familiar.
they
It's a rail
got to
spur. It's a-
starting to do shovel.
Totally unrelated to this
I know it
question.
is. You might miss something if you haven't looked harder. That's going to be my point.
No, Mr. Dinwiddie,
Yeah.
respectfully, sir.
Yeah.
The DuPage Airport, we don't have a seat on their board. We have no authority over their land.
It's
The
about
railroad
rail-
spur that you refer to
It's
is
about
irrelevant
railroads.
to
I
the
know all
Southeast
about-
Master Plan and the TIF
Yeah,
for
we're-
consideration tonight.
Anyway, it's about railroads. You know,
And
railroads.
I love railroads. My grandfather was a railroad man, but it's not
Okay.
relevant to tonight's discussion.
You don't want to hear that it cost them $1.5 million
I do not wanna hear
because
that.
they did not.
But you got it in anyway, so
Plan
well
ahead.
done. So,
That was close.
nicely done.
I think that's about all I have. Mainly is my concern, the statement, it's not going to cost taxpayers anything, and I don't know where you're going to get the first dollar to start paying for electric work without costing taxpayers money until you start to get an increment in 3 or 4 years. So that's like a big non-starter in my brain. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council.
Welcome back.
Oh, good call.
Pardon me?
There was a potential mechanical.
This is our IT manager, Mr. Costa, right here. Where's he? Forgive me.
Good evening. My name is David Henney, and I'm here representing Kirk 38 LLC. We're the owner of the southeast corner of Kirk Road and Route 38, roughly 3.5 acres. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. We have owned that particular parcel since 2007. Our company is a development company. We buy property vacant sometimes with buildings, do value add. We do industrial, commercial, medical office, mini storage, kind of run the gamut, do just about everything other than residential. When we bought the property in 2007, it was not our thought or expectation that we'd be holding it as long as we have, and that it would have been developed much sooner than, of course, it has today. The challenge that we have on that property is that there's a tremendous amount of utility work that needs to take place with regard to the power lines on the east side on Old Kirk. There needs to be roadway improvements. Old Kirk is really kind of barely passable at the moment, certainly not adequate for the purposes of a modern commercial development. And also a signal has been discussed and is really necessary given the access challenges that we have on the site and the grade changes. So there's a lot going on with the property. It's a great corner, but there's a lot of issues that have presented themselves that make it difficult to build. And, you know, a lot has been made of the but-for test this evening. And I can only speak for my own company's interests, of course, but I'd like to believe that we're a good example of the but-for test. And we're at this point and over the course of the last 17 or so years, we haven't found a path forward without city assistance or other meaningful assistance to deal with these issues. And we've had some good conversations with Ms. Timoshenko over time. And, you know, obviously we're not driving this process, but we are happy to participate in it. And we're hopeful that the end result of this is a TIF district that allows us the opportunity to develop the property. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Henney. Who else is interested?
Just have to do.
Oh, that's okay, take your time.
Okay. My name's Yvonne Dinwiddie, and I'm going to do this a little differently.
You're going to
And-
test me, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're going to test me, aren't you?
I don't know whether I'm going to test you
I
or
know, I'm
not,
teasing.
but I'm going to say one thing.
Okay.
Need should drive development. And all of these developers buy this property, and they hold it for years. You can go anywhere around the area. You'll see Batavia Enterprise has held a piece of property for 20 years. They buy it speculating that the property may become ready to be developed and the need for the property to be developed. That's not necessarily so here. If there was a need, there would be people scrambling because all of that property borders major roads and they're accessible. On June 17th at 7 o'clock, which you already announced, there is a public hearing at the City Council chambers for annexation of the 225.83 acres of this property. Now, without annexation, this property can't be done. It can't be done as a TIF. So I want to address some of the things that, and I can't pronounce her name, so I won't.
Is it our Economic Development Director?
Yes. She said a couple of things, and I read your 17-page document, printed it out, and I'm going to show you some evidence, if you will bear with me. I can't give you a TIF example because this is not a TIF yet, but make no mistake, our TIF districts are our tax dollars, 100% our tax dollars. When the real estate taxes are there, it's our tax dollars. Geneva cannot spend one dime that isn't a tax dollar. So for anyone to say that TIF districts do not, you know, it's not going to charge or it's not going to cause a reduction or an increase in taxes is wrong. It's a material misstatement. The money that goes to your schools, your parks, your road districts, and other taxing bodies is reduced for 23 years. It's reduced to the base amount for 23 years. And if the TIF is extended, it's reduced for another 12 years, as in TIF 2. And I would like to use an example of that
Well, we're here tonight to discuss the potential of TIF 4. We're not here to discuss TIF 2.
I want to make sure that you understand.
Oh, I suspect that-
You're saying that public dollars are not expended for TIF. And I'm wanting to give you an example how that is absolutely not true, and it's a material misstatement of fact.
We have an agreement to disagree with respect to the material statement. We also have to affirm that the discussion this evening is regarding TIF 4. If we want to have a separate discussion regarding what you perhaps see as a failure of other TIFs, we're happy to have that some other time.
I'll discuss it with my attorney, thank you. Obviously, there are no guarantees that a TIF will be successful, as is shown by the need for TIF 2. Who's responsible for the failure if the TIFs fail? We've had a lot of TIFs fail.
We meaning?
The whole area, Kane County in general, Batavia, Geneva, St. Charles.
Failed TIFs?
Well, you're part of Kane County, so when
I'm
you,
pressing you respectfully because what you've made is a materially false statement. We have never had a TIF fail in the city of Geneva. I cannot
That-
speak to other communities,
well,
but I do have to push back respectfully on that statement because I don't want people to leave the room thinking
well,
that.
we will be working on proof of that. So anyway, but anyway, your Geneva alderman voted, well, that's, again, that's going back to TIF 2, so I won't bring it back.
Thank you.
But TIF doesn't take into consideration the downturns in the economy. For example, in 2008, we had the bottom fall out of the real estate market. And so now, when you're looking at this and you're saying, well, 2016, 2019, they bought this property, but in 2012, you were talking to this developer, oh my gosh. You were talking to this developer
It'll still work, don't worry about that.
developing the property and putting in a TIF. So, you know, this is this is actually developing.
You can leave that, Mrs. Dinwiddie, you can leave that off, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. I forgot where I was now. Anyway, let's go back and say that the TIF has no effect on property taxes in the district, but it does. It reduces the property taxes to the other taxing bodies, and that's what I wanted to show you. Because it's a base, the base amount is frozen so that the school districts, the park districts, and all the other taxing bodies do not get an increase in their taxes because that base is frozen. So the increment, the increase that all the other taxing bodies would be getting is only distributed in the TIF district. So technically, the schools and the parks and all these other taxing bodies get their taxes reduced. And that is a fact. They do not get an increase in their taxes. And when these speculators bought this property, they bought it thinking that, well, you know, here it is, it's on a major corridor, we're going to be able to get maximum profits out of this and all of that. And if they could really do that without, you know, if they were really good developers, they could do it without a TIF because the property would be ready to develop.
Well,
There's no
let's
need.
not castigate developers. Let's not take into question their integrity or honesty as well. Let's talk.
I'm not questioning their integrity. I'm saying about development in general. I'm not talking about a specific developer.
Oh, okay. Well, you used
at
the word
this point.
speculators and if they were good developers, so,
Yeah, well, speculators and good developers that I'm not,
okay.
generally, not any specific developer.
All developers are bad.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Respectfully, thank you.
Anyway, I guess I'll just leave it at that because there's no real sense in arguing all of the other things when we have to go through it, do it from a different angle. But TIFs are generally not good. They generally fail, and when they do work out, they get extended. So for 23 years, when the school districts and the park districts and all the other taxing bodies have waited 23 years to get this new property on their tax rolls, they're not getting it, especially like in TIF 2. And the same thing with the Aurora Outlet Mall. So, you know, when you're doing this, it's good. If you want to give an incentive to a developer, fine. Give them an incentive, but not a TIF. If you give a developer an incentive we still see the immediate results of that incentive because the taxing bodies are getting their money, all of them. But when you put it in a TIF, the only people who are seeing any benefit from that TIF for 23 years is the TIF development itself. And so these guys are getting all their profits, and as somebody else said, they do come back and reduce and protest their taxes and have them reduced. And that we can prove because we have quite a few of them who have done that. So anyway, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I could go back and talk about the but-for and all of that, but I think these people have done a very good job of it. I just think that it's not right for anybody to say that the taxpayers are not contributing to this, because we are contributing 100%.
Anyone else? From either the south or the north side of the room? Yes. Welcome.
My name is Lori Krempel, Krempel. I didn't plan on standing before you guys today. I'm not real educated in TIF 4. But when this came to my attention, I did some research, and it's my basic understanding that TIFs, when property value goes up, so does property taxes. So like there's a big, like, oh, you know, TIFs are great because your property value will go up. Well, I really don't want my property value to go up, because then that means my taxes will go up. And especially with inflation, I feel like my property value has already like went up. Like houses next to me, you know, sold for $150,000 more than what I bought my house for. So, and then my other understanding is that there will be, if it is a TIF district, there will be two streams. One is the old property value before the redevelopment, the so-called base value, will continue to go where it always went, to schools, roads, parks, fire station, police, etc., which I'm totally for. That's where I want my tax dollars to go to. I have a 3-year-old son who's going to be going to Harrison, and I work at a park district, so I value. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
No, take your time.
And then the second stream, it will not go to public services. Instead, it will be diverted to subsidize the TIF districts. Some states allow incremental local sales taxes to be TIF'd. And so that is my other question is Illinois one of them? That where like on your receipt, you'll see, you know, your local, your state, or federal. And then there's like a small section at the bottom that will say like TIF tax. So, and the other thing is that, you know, Illinois, my understanding is the base is 23 years. So TIFs are typically 23 years long. And then they can be renewed for an additional 12 more years. And it's my understanding is that that the person who develops in that property, they'll have a base tax, and so while everybody else's taxes go up, their tax won't. If like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I'm not very educated in this, so.
You're doing great.
So and then, so like, I'm not opposed to redevelopment. You know, I'm a resident of Geneva. I want like in 23 years, you know, I'll be 50 something. And then in another 12 years, I mean, half of us may be still alive. But why,
No,
like,
I am
our
depressed.
future, but like, you know, the future of our children, like, why should we burden them with what we're deciding here? Because who's to say in 23 years from now, when that time clock ends, and it's like, hey, can I have another 12-year extension? And what if we say no? What if we say no, and then that development says, oh, well, we're going to pick up and move and find another building, then we're left with an empty, vacant building, another empty parking lot that's just going to grow grass, and there's going to be cracks. And do you know what I'm like trying to say is that if we don't give them what they want, they're going to move, and they're going to leave us and our children with the aftermath. I mean, so that's all I have to say. But can you inform me more about like TIFs, or do I have a general understanding of it, or am I completely wrong?
No, you're not completely wrong. I think there's some general misunderstanding. If you have not yet done so, I would certainly encourage you to read the documents that are online. It's not a turgid read by any means, but there is, if I may say so respectfully, a common narrative that somehow TIFs steal money from other taxing bodies. And that's something that certainly I would argue is not factual. But I will not present comments that somehow you interpret as me trying to steer your opinion. So I don't want to do that
I
in a
understand.
public hearing. But I'm happy to talk to you anytime.
Sure.
My cell phone's online. Shoot me a text. We can sit down for coffee. I'll buy. So
It's, trying to read those documents, it's just
Yeah.
way above my head. But only thing I have this general understanding is it's not going to be good for our community or the future of my child.
thank you very much. Podium is open. Good evening, sir.
Michael Olesen, Olesen. You guys have a hard decision in front of you, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to consider things. Geneva has wanted to develop that property for a long time. Doing a TIF district may be one of the best ways of getting the infrastructure into that area. Whether or not all of the criteria have been met to fulfill the TIF, that I do not know. But I envy your tasks, and I thank you very much for what you folks are doing for the long-term interest of Geneva. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Be happy to entertain a motion from the city council to close the public hearing. Motion by Marks, seconded by Kasserag. Roll call vote, please.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor? Aye. Swanson?
Aye.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
With a vote of 9 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 1 absent, the public hearing has been closed. We move on to item number 4, amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Item 5 is the omnibus agenda. All items, and there are many, that are marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine by this council. All those items can be enacted with one motion. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Bowering.
Second.
Seconded by Marks. Roll call, Clerk Kellick.
Bowering?
Aye.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
Kilberg?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor?
Aye.
Swanson?
Aye.
The omnibus agenda has been approved with 9 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 1 absent. We jump to number 8, municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city clerk to read the bills in their aggregate for our consideration.
Municipal bills for payment total $1,991,978.43.
Mayor, I move that we approve and pay the bills as read. The individual items that add up to that amount can be found in tonight's city council packet on the city website.
Alderperson Bruno makes the motion to pay the bills as presented. And seconded by Alderperson Bowring. Any questions or comments regarding those items? City Clerk, please take the roll.
Bruno?
Aye.
Ruby? Aye. Kilber?
Aye.
Kasserag?
Aye.
Maladra?
Aye.
Marks?
Aye.
Mayor? Aye. Swanson?
Aye.
Bowring?
Aye.
The municipal bills for payment have been approved with 9 affirmative votes, 0 nay votes, and 1 absent. We jump to item 11, folks, public comment. Anyone joining us still in the room? Did I miss something? Anyone joining us this evening? The floor is yours again. If you'd like to ask a question, present from information, curiosity, Mr. Chairman, welcome.
Again, Michael Olison. This time I'm standing before you as the chair for the Geneva Chamber of Commerce. Just want to bring attention to a couple of things that are coming up. On this Monday, we have our golf outing, which is out at Prairie Landings. We still have some open foursomes available, so if you are interested in attending a fun event, please visit genevachamber.com and register for the event. The more important thing is the upcoming Swedish Days, the granddaddy of all festivals, the longest running festival in the state of Illinois. That starts on Wednesday, the 19th of June, extends through Sunday, the 23rd of June. There are activities for the entire community and visitors to come in. We've got the parade on Sunday. We've got the carnival. There's, the craft beer tent, which my personal favorite. There's kids' activities. There's Swedenvass, which is all things Scandinavian. There are lots of things for the entire family to enjoy during Swedish Days. And we welcome you to come out. And further, if you have a little extra time and would like to volunteer, again, visit genevachamber.com. You can volunteer to help make this festival the premier festival in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Anyone else? New business from the dais? Alderperson Kilburg.
I'd like to commend the American Legion for their organization of the Memorial Day Parade. I want to thank the Geneva High School Band for their participation. This has been a long-standing event in Geneva and one that's appreciated by those that have served our country as well as the community that's appreciative of their services. And I'd also like to thank the city and the contractors involved in preparing our cemeteries for Memorial Day and having them in order and in an appropriate appearance for this important holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, a motion to adjourn is in order. So Marks gets it. All in favor of adjourning indicate by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Again, no committee of the whole meeting, so enjoy your Monday night.